Hey folks, and welcome into our presentation. My name is Dr. Luke Hobson. I'm a program manager at MIT, and along with my fabulous colleagues, we wrote this paper called Teaching and Learning Technical and Managerial Leadership Skills Through Scenario-Based Learning. This might be the nerdiest presentation for you of the day, so let's get started. A little bit about the introduction of how everything with this program came to be. Over here at MIT, working with our partners and conducting research, we realized that there is actually a skills gap when it comes to the technical fields. And this pertains to leadership. We have known now for years that when we have folks in the technical field, like scientists, engineers, and researchers, they've always focused and have been trained and educated on hard skills. Not so much, though, soft skills or human skills. Think of emotional intelligence types of leadership abilities. So, this pertains to growth mindset, critical thinking, collaboration, self awareness, and negotiation, just to name a few. But of course, the problem is that as these folks in these fields are just naturally rising above the ranks through hard work and from determination, they have found themselves, though, in leadership positions without any real formal training or education on how to be a leader. So that's how this program came to be with MIT, which we have dubbed as Leadership Academy for Scientists, Engineers, and Researchers, or as we call it, LASER. So when it comes to laser, this is the pedagogical model that we use in order to create and to establish learning. And we combine instructional design practices, learning sciences, and neuroscience. With putting that all together, we created our own type of pedagogical model that focuses and links to different types of activities found within the program. And we were able to actually do this for every single activity and then to map out the different percentages of what learners would be going through with those activities. So we're talking about exploring, practicing, applying, sharing, and assessing all the different pieces of knowledge. And this is how we take the entire learning process and put it all together for an online learner. So what is scenario-based learning? Scenario-based learning, or SBL, is one of my favorite learning strategies when it comes to instructional design. What this is doing is that it is allowing a student to go into a hypothetical or a real-life scenario that's based on an authentic issue, and we're asking them to put themselves into this position and then to figure out how to solve the problem around this scenario. What this does is that it creates interests. It establishes a real world connection because we're talking about an actual thing they're going to encounter or they have previously encountered or potentially encountering in the future. It's also going to increase the likelihood that the learner is going to remember this too. Focusing on retention, they're going to be able to think back to this scenario, how they actually approached it, and then what they did to solve that type of problem. So overall, this is going to develop tangible skills. And this is what I've seen over the years when it comes to creating real tangible skills with critical thinking, decision-making, problem solving, anything of the sort. Scenario-based learning is an extremely effective tool to use. Let's talk about the benefits of scenario-based learning. The first is duration of time and usability. This is totally up to you as far as for how you're going to use scenario-based learning. You can have one main overarching scenario that lasts for weeks, and you're going to be guiding the students through a type of a journey from week 1 all the way until, let's say, week 4. Or you can do the exact opposite to have a type of a quick hitting concept talking about an abstract topic. So let's say that you have a leadership theory in one video, and then immediately following that leadership theory video, you're then going to have a scenario-based learning type of a problem where the student is going to be putting themselves into a situation where they then need to use that leadership theory in order to solve the problem itself. So this provides more of a concrete example and provides clarity when it comes to something abstract and then really how to use it in the real world. And then lastly, you're giving learners a safe space to practice something that could be incredibly complex, and you would not want them just to go out and to try to wing it in the real world on the job and then hope it kind of pans out. So let's talk a little bit more about how to actually research this in order to make it effective. You need to know your target audience. So when it comes to the research, whether doing surveys, interviews, talking with subject matter experts, industry experts, professors, whatever it is, you need to be able to do this first. And then that's going to allow you to create learner profiles. So you can then understand their backgrounds, their past experiences of what they've gone through. And certainly, last but not least, are the barriers. What barriers have they encountered that you can then provide them a real tool in order for them to be able to overcome these in the future? So here's an example I want to talk to you about with scenario-based learning. And this comes from the first course in our program talking about strategy. And inside of this course, it had a main concept called the capability trap. And this is when organizations struggle with being able to implement a new idea in this massive organization, but they don't give it enough time to further develop. So because of that, they make too many changes too soon, and then they don't actually see results. So hearing that that was a real concept that our learners were going to be facing after I did my own research, this is what I put together for the scenario based all around this. And now you certainly, I'm not going to read you this entire thing, but what this is basically saying is that the learner has to think of themselves working for a manufacturer, and then they realize that they're getting an email from HR talking about how this new project management software is what everyone needs to use for going forwards, but due to time and a few other issues, there's not going to be as much training. However, this person is expected to then be able to deliver the training themselves to their employees. So then what I did is that I made a Photoshop file of an email itself coming from HR that you can then see, but the learner has to read this email to then solve the problem and then to be able to then take the next step. And that next step is talking about reflection. So the questions around reflection, because in the process, there is, of course, a reflective piece in order to evaluate, to assess, to synthesize, and to analyze. So the questions that we asked them to think about were to identify at least one example of the capability trap found within their own organization, and knowing what they know now, how would they approach this problem? So once again, linking to the real world, this form of scenario. And then for my final slide here, just for the main benefits and just to kind of give you a wrap up of everything, is that scenario-based learning creates a real-world scenario for learners to go through. It is going to be relatable content, but it's full of details. As you saw from my email or from that large prompt, I'm trying to make it as realistic as possible for the learner to go through. They're going to be developing problem-solving skills, critical thinking, decision-making, and every other form of emotional skill linking to leadership abilities. And last but certainly not least, it gives them a safe space to practice so that they are not just going out into the real world and kind of testing it out for the first time. And I'm just hitting the tip of the iceberg, folks, when it comes to scenario-based learning. But thank you so much for listening to my presentation. If you have any questions, more than happy to answer them right here and now. Thanks so much.